All right, so we are here with Rune. Hi, Rune.
Hi,
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling in from the middle of Denmark, actually, an island called Funen, where I live.
Amazing. I've been hearing a lot about the Nordic API Gateway, and I wanna understand exactly how do you serve these banks and open banking and the whole ecosystem of these neobanks and traditional banks in your offering.
Yeah, so Nordic API Gateway is a name we took off the shelf a couple of years ago when we focused very much on the Nordics. And what we do is we aggregate all the bank's PSD2 APIs. And if they don't have a PSD2 API, or if the PSD2 API is not compliant with regulation, we also have our own fallback access to banks. Here in the Nordics, we have what we call dual access approach to the market. So we can either access to our own interfaces or to the bank's PSD2 interfaces. And what we offer our customers, which could be banks, but it's also accounting system providers or payment services, or even like fintechs and other startups, is the ability to connect their users' account to their platform, like retrieving account information and transaction data information, or even perform payments directly from the account. And we have like one API right now that kind of does that for seamlessly for more than 1,000 banks across the Nordics, and it does for like both personal account access and business account access. So sometimes when people they ask, okay, so why is that important when we have PSD2? Isn't that a standard in itself? I often like does the analogy to electricity, where like if you want to plug in your power cord from your computer and you're sitting in UK, you have a different plug than if you're sitting in Denmark or if you're sitting in United States, right? And you should think that it would be very easy to just have the same plug. But in reality, you have to change factories, you have to change the whole like electricity net and how we actually work with all the appliances and so forth. And it's really, really hard to do so. And that's just in a simple world of a plug that gives you electricity. We still have a lot of different standards that actually enables companies to build adapters. And we are kind of that. We're in the business of building one big adapter for all European banks so that our customers don't have to do the same work that we're doing to kind of standardize the things, right?
So this is the bigger vision here. So
Yeah.
you want to serve more banks and all over Europe. That's what you mean.
Yes, of course. I think like the summer next year, we expect to be fully rolled out in Europe. And the reason why we say summer next year is actually the way we approach the market is by a focus on coverage on each of the markets. So we don't leave a market before we have full coverage. That means more than 95% of the population should be addressable through the services we build. That means almost all banks, all accounts, even like card companies that has an account, we kind of fetch those information as well, allowing our customers to actually build solution that works. Where like you could say that we're providing rails, and if you build like really poor rails, the trains that are built and should drive upon those will be like shaky. That means that the persons entering those trains will have like a poor experience, right? And the persons entering the trains is our customers, and our customers are the ones building the trains, right? So we have to make sure that we build like really sturdy, really stellar rails for someone to build a nice and pleasant journey on top of to the trains they build, right? Which is the solutions that they focus on in every sector.
Maybe you can lead us through the opportunities here in terms of the customers, because you said that's who you serve in the end goal. So what are the opportunities of open banking? What are the possibilities with this data that is going on these rails?
Yeah. So first of all, I think like open banking is part of a major movement where like we say since like 2000 and moving forward, the data that we generate about the world has exploded. So IBM did this survey in 16 that said like 80% of the world's data about the world has been generated within the last 12 months. That's insane, right? So the year before we only had like 20% of data allowing us to access like some information about the world. A year later, 80% new data has been generated. And this goes on year after year. So it's an exponential thing. And what happens if you have a lot of data is that you end up being bombarded with this data, and you end in a situation where you have to make choices all the time as a consumer. So Google, when they envisioned that everyone would be doing like price comparison on the internet, it's not going to happen because you don't have the time to do so. If you want to buy like a fishing rod, you can sit forever on the internet, like finding that fishing rod, right? If you want to buy a car, you can sit forever on the internet, like trying to figure out what car you should be buying and which is cheapest compared to the cost of life, the lifetime cost of the car and so forth. And in the end, you just want to have something presented to you that makes it easy for you to make the choice, right? Because you have so many things that you do. You have to watch Netflix, you have to do sports, you have to be a nice family father, you have to work hard. So everyone is kind of competing against or for your attention. And in that world, data becomes increasingly important for us to provide, to help services give us back personalization. And one of the last data silos that we had, especially here in Europe, but actually all over the world, there's actually two big data silos that's still kind of like closed and are being opened up. One is financial data, the other is health data. So I think we're going to see a similar wave within health data pretty soon. Apple has already started it with Apple Watches and so forth. Right? So in reality, what we do right now is we open up the world of banking in order to provide data that helps consumers and business owners make decisions faster and more easy and more conveniently, right? And then you can add to on top of that we also remove, you could say, intermediate from payment flows, because being able to pay directly with your account makes it much more transparent and a much more like singular thing to do than if you do it with a card from the classic card rails, where a lot of intermediaries is taking part of that journey and also taking a cut of the transaction itself. So I think that's probably the bigger kind of history here, that we're building APIs because in reality we want to get to the point where AIs can use the data provided by those APIs, and in the end the AIs are using that data to serve all the I's out there, right? So the movement is like from API to AI to I in the end, and we're just like partaking in that big movement, I would say.
And this is just the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look from like customers that we have on the accounting space, it's a natural fit to kind of like work with open banking, because accounting systems, they always work with transactions and with the web banks. Either they had bookkeepers reiterate back and forth between web bank and accounting system to pay the bills, to retrieve the CSV files, to do the reconciliation and so forth. Today, all this can be automated and happen through one interface, either the bank fully if they like did the accounting part, or through the accounting system itself. And so we see like a massive like transformation of that business area, and more accounting systems are becoming transaction focused more than bookkeeping focused, right? Providing companies with cash flow analytics instead of like just a backward view. And the same goes on for like PFM services. Instead of just like showing you how you spend your money, they're using data to predict how you're going to spend your money and how you can change your behaviors, right?
And this is very interesting for some of our viewers who are coming from, regulators, fintechs, traditional banks, neobanks. We even have today, we're going to have Lunar, right?
Yeah.
From the Nordics also. And I understand you had a partnership with them too, right?
Yeah, we recently launched a partnership with Luna in all Nordic markets, serving them with the ability to do account aggregation and payment from any of those accounts. And you can say Luna is a digital first bank, right? A neobank in the Nordics, trying to like become the strongest digital bank in all Nordic countries. And having a really great digital experience also means that they have a great chance of becoming like the user's primary choice of interface. So if they kind of like let the users aggregate all their accounts from different banks into Luna, they become the primary interface because it's much easier to use their experience, and then they can start serving up the financial products that the users or the bank customers actually would require to live their lives, right? So if you want a loan or a line of credit, they can use the data from the aggregation part to actually serve you with that instantly in the app, which effectively means that the bank that you aggregate into Luna, they don't get that chance. because they kind of lost the relation with the customer down the line, right? And that's a movement we see very much in banking right now, that banks, they are actually becoming the most active third-party providers within open banking. People, they always talk about like, okay, banks are serving up data that someone can fetch and then build like competitive services to banking. But in reality, what we see is that banks themselves are using this to get competitive edge within the market.
Sure.
So we have like a very big international bank. They're launching a service here in the Nordics. Actually, they launched it yesterday in a silent mode, but they're going to launch it over the next couple of weeks. That is very much a competitor to our own B2C offering. We have like a next level PFM app for young people that tries to automate the process of you becoming financially aware in a way where you don't notice, because people, they don't want to spend time on money in that segment, right? And they're building something that is very similar to that experience, but with the ability to lend you money if you need it to live the life you want. So it's not a bank, it's not a web bank interface, it's not a mobile banking interface, it's more like a companion. And this is coming from a bank, right? And it's built on top of open banking. Yeah. So I think it's exciting times right now.
So yeah, I see your company like all over. How old is the company? Tell me a little bit about of a background about yourself. What did you do before?
Yeah, so if we start with me, before like building this company, I used to work for eBay, and I was like heading up the development product at the Danish classified site that eBay bought, called the Blue Paper. So I spent a lot of years like within the classifieds industry, and I'm actually using much of the knowledge from that time to actually like base my analysis of the market of aggregators today. So like we are, for instance, in the horizontal business, right? We're serving up many categories right now. But what I envision is also there will be aggregators locally oriented with a very strong vertical offering. For instance, like in UK, serving up SMB customers, like business customers with solutions that does like cash flow prediction and so forth, can be very hard to compete against if you are spread over all of Europe, right?
Yeah.
Or doing a specific credit scoring engine for a specific market, for instance. So we will see some really strong aggregators that are vertically focused instead of horizontally. Right now, most of them are very horizontal like us. So I come from that business. Before that, I did a lot of like management consultancy and software consultancy, and used to be like a travel consultant. So I spent like most of my days around the world, actually, for more than 6 years. So I have like a very broad scope picture of like how to add technology, especially to bigger companies, without like spending years to do so. That was my primary purpose as a consultant in the older days. So in many ways, I use much of my background today. In 2010, I'd spent like more than a year like talking to friends and other colleagues about why didn't we have any tools to help us manage our money in a digital world. Money was moving at a faster pace towards digital in every sense, and your way of spending money was being virtualized. So you don't even have to have the cash that you're spending at hand anymore, right? You could just have a credit line and so forth. So how could we build something that could help us manage our money without actually becoming a tedious process or a manual process? And that's where I started Spear, which was the name of the company in the old days. Spear is a Danish slang word for money. So in 2010, I actually built the first account aggregator to appear in the Nordics, and one of the first to appear in Europe. In the beginning, it was actually a manual process of updating data. And the biggest request we got from our users was, can't you automate the process of like retrieving my account data from my bank and adding them to your system? And I thought, yeah, why not? So I started like talking to all the banks and realized that they saw the transaction data and the account data as theirs. And it kind of baffled me, because all our customers, they saw it as theirs, right? It's you that generated the data with your credit card by like swiping in stores and so forth. So we actually ended up in the middle of a larger discussion on a societal level, like who actually owned this data set. And we kind of like took the stance that this must be the individual that produced the data. The bank is actually only allowed to process this on my behalf, right?
Sure.
But we spent 2 years convincing banks about this, and in the end, at that time, the maturity curve wasn't there, like in terms of like opening up for these data sets. So we realized we had to do it ourselves. So in 2012, we built in Denmark the first automated system to retrieve data from any Danish bank. And this was kind of like the ground stone, you could say, or the foundation for Nordic API Gateway. Yeah.
Wow.
And then in 16, I approached Danske Bank, which is one of the biggest banks in the Nordics, and said, hey, if we carve out that technology, wouldn't it be nice that you started using this? Because at that time, Spear had been like segmented more and more towards young people. And I realized, okay, we built technology that actually could help any segment out there. But we didn't have the time to build like a pension module or a business module and so forth. So I realized that we could actually start selling the service that kind of attached bank accounts through APIs automatically, right? And Danske Bank, they went live in all 4 markets here with account aggregation in their mobile banking offering in 2018, like 1.5 years before any PSD2 API was available on top of us. So at that time, we actually mapped out a network of our own interfaces to all banks in the Nordic countries. And that was, you could say, like the starting signal for Nordic API Gateway. So we launched Nordic API Gateway officially in January 2018. And today we have like the biggest Danish bank and one of the biggest Nordics, which is Danske. We have Jyske Bank, which is the second biggest bank in Denmark. We have like DNB, that is the biggest bank in Norway. We have OP Bank, the biggest bank in Finland. And we have like Ressourcebank, one of the biggest like lender banks in the Nordics on all their markets. And we have a bank called Sastobanki in Finland. We have a large international bank working in the Nordics and soon also in other countries. And then we have like a lot of accounting systems. I think we have like 14 accounting systems working on top of us. And we have fintechs like Luna and Pleo working with our services, and a lot of startups, more than 100 startups that are actually live with solutions on top of us.
Amazing. And before we finish, of course, I can talk with you for hours. I mean, it gives me perspective of how you build a company. What is the advantage that you have right now in the market with your knowledge and experience and all these clients? How do people find out about you? And I'm sure I already know about one client who actually wants to connect with you here. But how do people connect to you, find out more information?
I think normally they would go to our homepage if they can find that, right? So you would say like we do a lot of press. Most of the press is a mix of like international press to like fintech media, and then a lot of local press. Because the way we kind of approach the markets is that we don't want to go to Spain, France, and Italy at the same time. Because if the Rails is not able to be matured to the level we need for serving the quality we want, then we end up with a lot of customer requests on all the markets, and we need to talk to the FSAs, to the banks to help them improve their interfaces. And then we stretch too thin. True. And we end up in a situation where we can't provide the quality. And what happens then is we might get the contracts, but then we just leave behind a trail of churning customers, right? And I think that's the most important part here, is that this is not about APIs. It's not about like having access to 2,000 banks, because if they are spread over all the markets and effectively giving you access only to 60% of each of the markets from a coverage point of view, you end up in a situation where you stretch too thin too fast. So we don't do like a lot of press in Spain. It doesn't mean we don't want a customer there, because we actually travel to Spain the moment we have a customer request for that market, right? And normally we use our existing clientele, like the relations we get with those, to figure out what do they want to do next. So there's like a maturity curve going on for open banking. You typically, as a bank, you start with like, I want to do account aggregation. And once you do that, you realize that, okay, it doesn't really give much back to the users. What if I add payment initiation? And all of a sudden users understand that, hey, I don't need to use other banking apps than this one, because I can do all my payments, I can see all my accounts. And like the service grows, and they get like more and more interface and relation with customers, even perhaps customers that are not customers with them, but you're just using their services, right? And the next level is then that many banks realize, hey, we can use the PSD2 framework to actually internationalize some of our services without having to have a full banking license in all the markets. And then it grows fast. So we have We have banks that are taking us to Poland, to Baltics. We have a bank that takes us to UK and Ireland. And so every time we kind of lay out new rails, we do it together with large-scale banks typically, or it could be guys like Visma on the accounting side, so that we enter a market with a strong player and a strong kind of trust seal, and also someone that we know actively will be using the service from day one, so that we can use that to mature the market to the quality we need. So you can like get hold of us like by just going to the webpage and click the contact button, or you can write me directly on LinkedIn if you can find me there, or on Twitter. And we are like actively in discussion with customers all over the world right now. So it's not like we don't want to discuss. It's more like the roadmap of when we appear in a country.
Yes.
But again, having said that, summer next year is very early on. It's actually like less than 9 months now, right? At that time, we will be fully European, so customers can actually use our service all over Europe.
Thank you very much. I think it's super relevant for the summit. You're discussing a lot of APIs and open banking and opportunities all over the world. And I would love to continue this this conversation also during the day today with the participants, and if they have questions, of course. And thank you for your time very much. We really appreciate it, and
thank you for
we want to
having me
hear
here.
from you very soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a good
Enjoy.
day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.